Welcome to Really Raha, the podcast for women who know they're way too powerful to be stuck in a 9 to 5. I'm Rahaf, multi-six-figure high-ticket sales coach, PhD student in global leadership and change, and sponsored skateboarder. I went from serving tables and chasing tips to mastering high-ticket sales and building income streams that don't require me to trade hours for dollars. Here we talk about the real path into remote sales, landing aligned offers, closing with confidence, regulating your nervous system under pressure, and building a skill set that pays you from anywhere. This isn't bro sales. This is psychology, power, and feminine precision. If you're here, it's because you feel it. Freedom isn't optional for you. It's inevitable. Let's get into it. Hi, welcome back to the Really Raha podcast. I'm going to blow your mind with today's episode. This episode is going to speak directly to the server girly who doesn't even realize how much of a sales skill set she already has, because I'm going to show you the direct correlation with the steps of service in a restaurant from the moment that a guest walks in the restaurant door to the moment that you close the check, and how each of those steps correlate directly to the Radiance framework. And if you don't already know me, I am a high-ticket sales coach, and we use the Radiance framework to walk through every phase of a sales call, to get the prospect in a buying state, to build the urgency, to build the gap, everything in between, from the top of the call to the end, and you're closing the deal. Now, the Radiance framework is the framework that I'm actually going to be doing my research for my dissertation right now. Like, I literally just started writing my dissertation. And the research study I'm going to be doing is going to be around the Radiance framework, its effectiveness, and why it works so well with women because of how much it's based in human psychology and NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. So this is a framework with depth, just like how a dining experience is as well. If you haven't already seen the episode with the Radiance framework, episode 7, I actually walk you through every step of the Radiance framework. So watch that before this one or after this one. It doesn't matter. You might listen to this one again, but in this episode, I'm going to go through each phase of Radiance and connect it to the restaurant equivalent. Okay? So let's talk about R. So R is resonate. This is what happens at the top of the call. Now, the restaurant equivalent of this is greeting the table. This is where you're setting the tone of the experience. This is where your table knows that you're the one to guide them. Those split-second micro impressions is what's going to dictate the entire experience. The way you smile, the energy that you come in with, your ability to check your personal bag at the door before going up to the table. Truly just giving them the experience that they need for that hour and a half experience. The way that you start pacing the conversation, the confidence that you show up with, your body language, whether your shoulders are up, whether you're slouched, the way that you welcome them in. The guest is going to decide very quickly in that moment, do I trust this person? Am I safe here? Is this going to be an incredible experience? Does this person know what they're doing? So this is how a prospect is going to feel at the top of a call as well. A server who is not very confident in the greeting at the very top, they might show up with awkward energy. They're timid, they're rushed, they're robotic, they over-explain, they lack the command of the table, being able to hold the authority so that the guest knows that, hey, this is my leader. But a strong server is warm, grounded, the authority is calm, they know how to lead, they know how to be authentic in the way that they lead, and they are emotionally attuned. They make the guest relax immediately. And that is the goal for the prospect at the top of the call, is we want them to feel like they've put the guard down, that they're open to receiving the journey that you're about to take them on. This is resonate. And on a sales call, this is why this is not just building rapport. You're setting the emotional tone of the conversation. You're holding the frame. You're establishing authority. You're creating safety. You're showing leadership. And you're making them feel seen. So this is why the opening of the call matters so much, because the prospect, they're already subconsciously asking, can this person lead me? Do they understand me? Do I trust them? Do they feel certain? And can they hold me emotionally? And let's talk about food being an emotional experience. So Resonate is all about emotional trust and energetic leadership. Now let's talk about A. So this is when this is when you're taking the drink orders. This is where you're learning the table style, understanding their pace. This is where there's questions like, have you dined with us before? Are you celebrating anything tonight? Are there any allergies at the table? What are you in the mood for? Would you like still or sparkling water? So you're gathering information here. And this is what's happening in the audit phase of a sales call. You're understanding the process that they're using and how long they've been using it. If the offer that you're selling is a biz op offer, this is where you're asking about the job that they're currently in, how long they've been in the job, etc. So the server is auditing for the preferences, the expectations, the mood, the pace, how fast you're talking, their needs, how often you're filling up their water, how much water they're drinking, because everyone drinks at a different pace. And I don't know about you, but I worked a lot in like fine dining restaurant, like white tablecloth restaurants. So the steps of service here are maxed out. Just like high ticket, the more high ticket you get, the more maxed out your skill set needs to be to serve a higher caliber avatar, a higher caliber prospect or guest, because they're watching, right? At the table, the servers are constantly auditing. They're watching for who's paying, who's leading, who's indecisive, who wants attention, who wants space, who's overwhelmed. So the same thing is happening on the sales call. Audit is where you're understanding their current situation, their current process, their current frustrations, their current results, what they've tried, what's not working. You're understanding their emotional patterns here. And this is where you start to identify the patterns as well. Because this is in the restaurant, this is where you understand, what table am I serving? Because you cannot diagnose, like we can't go on to D in Radiance without auditing first. And most proficient closers, they skip this part. If they don't get this checkpoint, they just go on to diagnose. But we need this in some sort of way. It's kind of like recommending wine before asking what food they like. It's like, yeah, maybe you could get away with it, maybe for like a lower ticket offer or a lower level restaurant, but true high level service, you're catering the entire experience by understanding the process. And then we can move on to diagnose. So diagnose is where we diagnose the problem. The restaurant equivalent of this is explaining the menu and really helping the guests understand what they actually need. Because this is where the elite servers separate themselves, just like elite closers. Because the average server might say, yeah, everything here in the restaurant is good. But the elite server says something like, okay, based on what you said in audit, here's what I'd recommend. So this is diagnosis, is the server is able to identify what the guest thinks they want versus what would actually satisfy them. If the guest says, I don't know what to get, the elite server says, okay, what kind of flavors do you normally like? That's diagnosis, because diagnosis is awareness building. You're raising awareness here. You're raising urgency here. So if the prospect on the sales call says, I need more clients, and it's a business coaching offer you're selling, but through the diagnosis, you realize that it's not a lead problem, it's a conversion problem. This is where you can properly diagnose. You connect patterns. You are able to expose the roots of the problems, not just the surface level symptoms. And you show the real cost. This is where that urgency is really built up, because you're helping them understand that the issue is deeper than they initially realized. And then we go into illuminate. This is probably my favorite phase of a sales call. This is where you pre-handle objections before they become objections. This is like the most NLP secret shifting moment of the call, because when you do this phase right, you have an astronomically lower chance of getting an objection at the end of the call. Okay, so let's talk about the restaurant equivalent. So this is where you handle concerns before they become complaints. You've probably been in a situation, right? The restaurant just got hit, so many orders in the kitchen, and you know that your drink order from the bartender is taking way longer than usual. It's already at 20 minutes. You're like putting your head around the corner just to see if it popped up. And you also don't want the bartender to know that you're like peeking at them. But you know that there's chaos happening right now in the drinks, in the food. So the way to pre-handle this before it becomes a problem when you drop the check is saying, just so you know, the kitchen is moving a little slower tonight. We just got hit. Or say they order a dish that you know is spicy and it doesn't say spicy, letting them know, like, okay, just so you know, this dish is spicy. Is that okay? So you're pre-handling the fact that, hey, that could drop on the table and they hate it because it's spicy. Or maybe they order more food than they probably realize because they don't know that your restaurant's portions are huge. So letting them know, like, hey, by the way, the portions are huge. Because then all that food's going to hit the table and it's going to be like, I can't even eat all this. Like, why didn't you tell me that this was so much food? Like, you clearly knew. So those are just like some examples of how to pre-handle concerns before they become concerns, because the server's illuminating the expectations, the concerns, the friction that's hidden, the long wait times, etc., any misunderstandings. And the same happens on a sales call. So illuminate is where you identify the smoke screens, the money objection, the time objection, the shopping around objections. You isolate that and you find out the genuine fear. Oh, that's too much money. I've never invested in the past before because of how much money it is. Okay, so then you reframe money to center around resources versus resourcefulness. You get them to see how it's not even about money. It's about how resourceful we can get to get the things we want. And then you ask them what prevented you from becoming resourceful. That's the genuine objection. So you're identifying the genuine fear that's underneath the smokescreen objection. So this is where you pre-handle it. This is where you use reframes and analogies and you walk through the NLP process and you address all the resistance before the pitch, because you have more trust during this part of the call before the survival instincts of money pop up later. So illuminate is where you bring all this hidden resistance into the light. So it's just like the server saying, hey, heads up, the dish is kind of spicy, or hey, heads up, like drinks are taking a little bit longer tonight. So you're helping the prospect emotionally prepare. Then we get into align. A, the restaurant equivalent of this is recommending the perfect meal pairing for that guest. And in a sales call, this is where you tailor the offer to be a white glove fit for the prospect. And this is like the personalization of the experience, because the server says something like, okay, so I know you ordered the Chilean sea bass, and that is a very buttery, flaky dish. I would really recommend a Chardonnay that's super buttery, super oaky. I would recommend maybe the Rombauer Chardonnay to pair with that sea bass. How does that sound? So that's an example of align, is you aligned their food that they ordered to be with a glass of wine. And I don't know if you know this, but Rombauer is actually a high-level Chardonnay because of how oaky and buttery it is. So they're trusting you, and you're able to make that white glove fit by asking them, like, what do you like? What's the dish that you're picking? And it becomes like this nice aligned fit, because this isn't like, here's my program. This is, okay, based on what you shared, like, what do you feel like you would really need from a program? And how do you like to learn? How do you like to be trained? So that gives you an opportunity to be able to position your pitch at the end to make it that white glove fit. And the prospect starts to think, oh my God, like this feels like it was made for me. That alignment creates that emotional certainty so that they can feel like, hey, this is for me. I trust this. I feel like I made the right decision getting this. And then we get into Nova. So the restaurant equivalent of Nova is the elevated dining experience, like when it goes up, up, up. So this is where you make it not just about the food that they're eating. You're making the whole experience for the table to be memorable for them, something they'll never forget. For example, if you know that it's going to be like a birthday, it's a celebration for a birthday, and they didn't say anything about, wanting a candle. Well, this is where you bring a candle up and you surprise them, and they didn't even order dessert before they even finish their entrees. You already have it set up, because that's going to make them go from like, okay, this was really good food, to wow, like she really elevated my experience and I will never forget this. So on a sales call, this is where you take them into their 2.0 identity and you start building that gap. So you help them envision the freedom, the ease, how their life would look different, how it would look tangibly different, their lifestyle, their future self. This is where they start to see what's possible for them. You stretch them to see what's possible. And then C is contrast. So this is where you show the cost of inaction. And this might be a little bit of stretch with a restaurant parallel, but I think I found a way to make it work. So the restaurant equivalent of contrast is the guest is already thinking, like, what if this experience ended right now? What if I didn't have this white glove service with this server? So contrast is the difference between being cared for and not being cared for. So that's the analogy we're going to create here. So imagine no recommendations, bad service, you didn't have the wine pairings, you felt ignored. So the guest suddenly starts to realize the value of the experience and how important it is. Like in sales, this is, well, what happens if nothing changes? Like the other side of the coin. This is where the emotional gap becomes wider because Nova takes them up and contrast takes them down. So the space between these two phases is what creates the urgency. The higher you take them up, the lower from baseline they will be so they can properly make a decision that's not from baseline. Because as humans, we're operating at this baseline. We all have our baseline that we're operating from. It's the comfort zone. And we don't make decisions to change unless something takes us out of that baseline and we have that I'm done moment. That's human behavior. Humans don't really make decisions with urgency from desire. It's like, yeah, that's kind of nice. Financial freedom. Okay, cool. But what's going to actually light the fire under them? That's what contrast does. This is the emotional consequence. Like what happens if nothing changes? The repeating cycles, the burnout, the waking up every day, the dreading the work, the missed opportunities. So this is where the prospect realizes, oh my God, like I actually cannot keep doing this. Like something has to change right now. Because the contrast emotionally is activating that decision making. Without contrast, like if it was just Nova, Nova is just a fantasy. But the pairing with contrast right after is what makes it a necessity. And then we go into our final phase, which is extend. This is the pitch. This is the closing the table. This is the close. So the server says, okay, here's the check, et cetera, et cetera. Notice that there's no emotion in dropping the check. The restaurant does not apologize for charging because the value has already been established throughout the entire dining experience. And the same goes for high ticket sales. If radiance was done properly on a sales call, the close feels natural. It feels like it just makes sense. All the pieces just come together. So extend is presenting the investment, you're inviting that commitment, you're guiding them in the next steps, and you're making the decision feel normal, like matter of fact. I don't know how else to say it. It's just matter of fact energy. Like, yep, this is the value. Here's what's next. What do you want to do? And more amateur closers here get weird because they skipped a step of service. They didn't go deep enough in a phase. They weren't as attentive to detail. Because great closers do not fear the check. They're confident. They're confident in the way that they handled that table experience because they know I served this person well. I'm getting 20% tip. And honestly, that's why restaurant servers become such amazing salespeople because of their ability to discern and to walk through the steps and to have that confidence because they already understand sequencing between the steps. Emotional attunement, how to discern energy, how to like almost mind read, how to recommend, how to pair, how to upsell. This is service psychology. You, as a server, already know how to guide human beings through that experience. A closing call, take it from me. This is my 3rd year in high ticket sales and I served tables for 15 years of my life. It's not that different. You're just learning a deeper skill set of being able to serve a table on a Zoom call, if you will. So my intention for this episode is to show you how close you are to switching industries and leveraging your skill set and making more money in a day that you ever could in a month of serving tables. It's nuts. You're just in the wrong industry. So I want this episode to light that fire under you with your mindset, with that delusional mindset of knowing, hey, I actually do have what it takes because everything else becomes learning radiance in the context of a sales call with mock calls, practice, repetition, everything. Just understanding a new framework now. So, yay! Oh my God, this episode was so fun. Send me a DM with your biggest breakthrough if you were a server and it's really landed for you. And this is what we're doing inside Revenue Room. So as always, you'll see a link in the show notes. Come join me and the other women inside who were servers, restaurant workers. Some are moms. Like they all want that financial freedom. They all want to learn sales so they can just be in an industry that supports their cycle, that supports their feminine flow. So We can hop on a call, see if it would be a good fit for you. All that information is in the show notes. I love you so much, and I'll see you next week. If this episode resonated with you, if something clicked, stretched you, or made you see what's possible, share it and tag me on Instagram at Radiant Rahaf so I can hype you up properly. And if you haven't already, subscribe and leave a 5-star review so more women who are ready to step into high-ticket sales and reclaim their freedom can find this space. Thank you for being here. I'm so excited for you already. See you next Tuesday.